Well, welcome to Only Love Today. We have Lisa Steven joining us. I'm so excited to get to know her more.
Thank you so much for having me, Megan. I'm super excited to be here with you and your listeners.
Lisa Steven began working with teen moms in 1997 through Teen MOPS, which I learned. I didn't even know MOPS had Teen MOPS, which I thought I love this organization even more. And
Yeah.
then in 2003, she co founded Hope House, Colorado, and has served as the founder and executive director ever since. Lisa is also a co founder of the Colorado Teen Parent Collaborative. As a former teen mom, Lisa is committed to empowering teen moms in her community and across the world. I'm excited because you guys were like, since the podcast Only Left Today is so new, when I got your, like, marketing team's email, my husband was like, "That's gotta be scam or something," and I was like, "No, I like, somebody found me," and so I was, like,
Love that.
Googling, and then I came across I was like, "Well, what is Hope House?" And that was the first time I had heard of Hope House and, Hope House, Colorado, there's a couple locations, we'll talk about that, but, um, not many people know because I don't talk about this all the time, but in college, I was actually a volunteer counselor at a crisis pregnancy center.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I had like tons of interaction with teen moms
Yes.
to encourage them, like, and we were in Joplin, Missouri, and I was at crisis pregnancy center called Life Choices, beautiful organization, but just so much cyclical poverty there.
Yeah.
And so the girls would come in and just say, "Yeah, well, my mom was 15 when she had me, so she doesn't really care that I'm pregnant and I can
Yeah.
do all these things," and then so you knew that they were on this track again, but then there were the hard ones too where they didn't want to be a mom. And so
Yeah.
you could do these counseling sessions and then at the end of the day, you just had to pray
Yeah.
that they would choose differently or that on the way to get an abortion, the car would break down or stuff like
Hmm.
that, so I spent some college time, very, very short, with teen moms, but God
Oh,
really used that time to soften my heart
yeah.
on because you know how you can just be like, "Oh, this is," you have righteous anger against injustice or different things going
Yeah.
on, but he grew compassion for, wow, if I had had your story, and been through what you've been through, like, I probably would be making some of the same choices too. And you just grow in grace when you get to know somebody more, I feel
Oh,
like. So
so
I'm
true.
excited for you to tell us your story. So Lisa has a book that's already come out. I've read it. It's amazing. Very detailed on how Hope House was founded. It's called A Place to Belong, and it's the true story of a teen mom, a humbling leadership journey, and a house called Hope. But Lisa, can you just kind of give us an overview of who you are and what is
Yeah.
your story?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for sharing about the book. It is probably one of the greatest honors of my life to get to share the stories of what God has done and the many miracles that He has performed in building Hope House in my life, but also in building Hope House and building building into the lives of our teen moms. So, as you mentioned, I was a teenage mom. My husband and I got pregnant and got married when we were 17 years old, and had just turned 18 when our son was born, who is now 38. And I have three beautiful
Yeah.
grandchildren. He's been married for about 15 years, and two additional adult kids, as well as my oldest son. Um, so my kind of personal story, I grew up in a home that was, I mean, it's a little trite to say dysfunctional, but that is what it was. It was very chaotic, very loud, a lot of yelling, a lot of emotional abuse, some physical abuse between my parents. Um, very just a home where you honestly grew up feeling like you were literally walking on eggshells all the time because you just weren't sure, like, when was something going to erupt or when was something going to set my dad off.
And you were the
And
oldest,
that
right?
was
So
the
that's a
oldest.
that's a different weight when you're the oldest carrying all that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yes, and it's interesting because so often, I mean, I definitely relate to the teenage moms I serve from the perspective of being a teenage mom, but I think I relate to them maybe almost even more from the perspective of having grown up in a home that like that, where you carry and kind of shoulder adult responsibilities way sooner than the average child. And so you feel like you kind of really didn't have a lot of a childhood. You kind of grew up really fast and took care of grown up responsibilities in your home. And that's typically true of almost every teenage mom we serve today. Um, so yeah, so grew up in a kind of a rough home, but went to church with my grandmother, who was went to a Lutheran church. I think she volunteered or worked in the office, and I just remember going to church and feeling like God must live just here, like in this building, because everything's orderly and happens in the same order, and people are like
Mm.
kind to each other. I have no idea if they were like that when they left the doors, but inside the church, everything happened in an orderly fashion, and I was like, wow, I wouldn't have known the words as a child, but I understood that God was a God of order, and I thought He only lived in that building. So it took me
Mm.
a while to figure out, God is obviously everywhere. But one of the beautiful things about and hopefully I'm not jumping ahead too much. You can ask me more
You're
later, but
fine.
one of the beautiful things about marrying into my husband's family is that my mother-in-law was and is a strong believer, a woman of faith, and through I was a Christian when I got married, but I don't know that I was. I don't even know I knew how to grow in my faith. And so she was the person who kind of put me on that path of growing in faith and coming to know Jesus in a deeper way. And so obviously now know God lives everywhere, not just in one little
Yeah,
Lutheran church.
that's amazing. And so you had from your husband's family, you had support as a teen mom.
Yeah. Yeah. So, telling my family was, I mean, I didn't want to have to tell them that we had gotten pregnant, but I wasn't terribly concerned about their reaction because I honestly didn't care about their opinion, which kind of says a lot. But I very much cared about my future in-laws' opinion and was very concerned about telling them because I didn't want them to be disappointed in me, and I didn't want them to be disappointed in my husband. We'd only been dating for a year, like from 16 to 17. So, uh, I mean, clearly there was going to be disappointment one way or another, but their reaction to us, coming to them and telling them that we were pregnant, you could read, the whole story in the book, but it was honestly probably one of the best examples of parenting that I could have ever received. I am quite sure after that conversation, there were many tears and a lot of heartache for them because, of course, nobody's vision or dream for their 17-year-old son is that he's pregnant and there's going to be that early of a marriage. But their reaction literally was, okay, well, let's talk about what marriage looks like. And it was an assumption. They assumed not in a negative way, not in a judgmental way, but the assumption was you'll get married and you're going to figure out how to be parents and you're going to figure out marriage and we're here for you. But let's have
Mm.
some serious conversation about what being married looks like because it's not easy. It's not something you do on a whim and you're making a lifelong commitment to one another. So they gave us great advice. They asked us some questions, but essentially they gave us their support, and I think we knew we'd maybe not, way deep down, we knew we'd be okay. There's still a lot of like fear and like, how's this going to work?
Yeah,
But having that support was really critical.
that's incredible. And then you didn't feel forced to be married, but
No,
you were
yeah.
with the, you know?
And actually, my husband had already asked me to marry him. So my
Oh.
proposal, my proposal happened outside of the clinic when we found out we were pregnant and sitting in his car. And he's literally like, well, what are you doing a week from Friday? I'm like, okay, well, we're going to do that over someday. So for my 10th anniversary, we had a for real proposal and we renewed our vows and had a
Oh.
more of a traditional wedding. Not traditional, but
Yeah.
not quite as rushed because we did get married in 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
it's a quickie.
Yeah. And you had a lot going on. I remember reading in your book, like your mother-in-law's health, and there were
Yeah.
just a lot of factors at play during that, but they continued to
Yeah.
be supportive and which is
Yeah.
amazing. But can you help us maybe understand what some of the challenges might be for teen moms when you were a
Yeah.
teen mom versus what are the challenges today that you're
Yes.
seeing teen moms facing?
Yeah, so the through line, the one thing that I don't think has changed from Mary being a teenage mom until teenage moms today is that there is a deep and incredible sense of shame and judgment that is put upon teenage moms, that literally everywhere you go, whether you're walking into the grocery store and you kind of have a baby on your hip and people are looking at you like, is that your baby sister or your kid? Which is very, they're not even trying to be
Mhm.
judgmental, but it's just you see the looks on the
You're
faces.
curious. Yeah.
Yeah, curious, usually curious in a somewhat judgmental feeling way. All the way to like one of the stories I tell in my book is, taking my son to a clinic for a doctor's visit, and the doctor, being essentially, you could tell from the beginning, the minute I walked through the door, that she was not okay with me being a teenage mom, not okay with teenage moms in general. She left me waiting for a really long time with my son kind of he was undressed as a 6-month old sitting on a metal table. She had put no cover down on the table. So it was a really difficult visit. And then a week later, I get a knock on the door, and my son is napping, and it's social services or child protective services. And the woman wanted me to wake Johnny up and bring him down and let her, check him over. The doctor had reported that he had deep scratches on his back. Thankfully, the visit happened quickly after the report was made, so there was no evidence whatsoever of scratches on him because he didn't have any. But she also, said that he had neurological damage because he was shaking, which was because he was cold, lady. But
Oh.
that like feeling of kind of complete and utter like helplessness that a teenage mom has, because you really have no agency. You have no sense of control over your own life and over being a mom. And so even though that visit ended well and the woman left, I promptly fell completely apart because in my brain, and maybe this isn't exactly how the process works in real life, but in my brain, she could have just taken my son and walked out the door. And I would have had to have figured out whether or how I could get him back, all
Mm.
because I had him when I was 18 years old. And so that's an example of the kind of literal discrimination, and judgment that our teenage moms face. And really nothing has changed over time, when it comes to the types of treatment that our teenage moms face. What has changed, I think, through the years is, uh, there's many years ago, like in the 60s, teenage moms would often be, you wouldn't necessarily have an abortion, but you would be sent somewhere. Like I had an aunt in the late 1950s who was sent away to have a
Yeah.
baby, and then the
Yes.
baby was placed somewhere, and you never
Yeah.
saw the baby again. So there were injustices then too. Um, Abortion became more common, and so that, changed some things over the course of the years. I think now, there's more openness to talking about, we don't send people away to have a baby anymore. But one thing that is becoming incrementally more difficult since COVID is, the impact of really anybody who is in an at-risk population being stuck in an unsafe situation over a long period of time, creates a wave that we're going to be dealing with probably for the next decade at least, of increased domestic violence, increased mental health issues, increased substance use. The teenage moms we're working with now are younger, like they got pregnant at a younger age, because I said this and no one would listen to me, but everybody always said you're safer at home during COVID. And I was like, that is true if you live in a safe home. It is not
Mhm.
true if you live in
That's
an
right.
unsafe home. If you live
That's
in an
right.
unsafe home with an abuser and you're 10, 12, 13 years old, we're seeing younger and younger pregnancies. We're seeing, the impact of the increased substance abuse and violence inside of those homes, over a 2-year period of time. So the data is not out yet, but anecdotally, I'm part of a statewide collaborative in the state of Colorado. I can say that teenage moms are harder, in quotation marks, only from the perspective of they've dealt with even more trauma than teenage moms might have a decade ago. And so their mental health struggles are more significant.
Mm. Yeah, because just I mean, even if you live in an abusive home, you get to go to school and have a
Y-
break from that
You
home
know,
for a little bit.
yeah. And hopefully a lifeline, maybe somebody that you can tell something to, someone that
Sure.
notices something, someone that sees
Sure.
something, makes a call. And we do have data
Yeah.
that, of course, CPS calls just dropped Child Protective Services calls dropped dramatically during COVID because children were not going where someone could see that something was happening and make that call.
Yeah. Wow, so they're really facing a lot today, and in your book, you discuss a lot about generational poverty. Can you
Yeah.
help us, it's a significant challenge for some of the things we're
Hmm.
talking about, domestic violence, or maybe is higher in
Yeah.
impoverished areas. But what are some of the key strategies or programs that Hope House, the organization that you started, implement to achieve this goal of breaking generational poverty?
Yeah. So, well, let me start with just maybe sharing just a little bit about the difference between situational poverty and generational poverty. So, I grew up in a home that experienced situational poverty. So, in other words, my parents were both middle class, came from a middle class background, but my father's alcoholism and mental health issues caused our family to be in economic poverty and really in emotional and relational poverty. In generational poverty, these are families who, for generations, have experienced violence. They're very transitory, lots of living in homeless shelters, moving from place to place, not having stable housing for generations, substance abuse for generations, kind of all of the things you would associate with poverty. But what's key is that we have different value systems. The middle class, the poverty class, and the wealth class. We all live within a different value system. You can learn a lot more about this through the AHA Institute and Ruby Payne's book, Bridges Out of Poverty, which is the beginning of the framework we use to build our self sufficiency programming and metrics and measuring tools. Um, in generational poverty, our teenage moms literally for generations. So our teen mom, and her mom before her, none of them saw a healthy marriage. So for many
Wow.
of our teenage moms, they don't know anybody who's married. The only people they've ever met who are married are the staff who work at Hope House. So they have never seen a healthy example of parenting. They have never seen or had modeled for them a healthy example of discipline and how we discipline our children and what healthy discipline constitutes. They've literally never seen healthy relationships in action. And so it is very true that one person can make a huge difference. That one teacher, that one person at church who takes an interest in you, the one volunteer for Big Brothers, Big Sisters, or Whiz Kids, or one of those organizations that serves, youth who may be considered at risk. Those people make a huge difference because they're that one person modeling what it might look like to have a healthy relationship. So for Hope House, what our theory of change in nonprofit parlance is that true transformation happens within long-term healthy relationship with a healthy adult. So everything is built on relationship. It's the way Jesus made us. It's the way we seek to fill those holes in our hearts. We're constantly seeking that relationship. And so while some of the you'll hear, oh, that teen mom got pregnant because she was looking for someone to love. Yes, there may be some truth in that, but it's so much more complex than that. So at Hope House, we start from the second they walk through the door, or honestly, the second they pick up the phone. We always say the person who answers the phone at Hope House had better be a hug you through the phone person, because the minute you walk through, or the minute you get at that phone call picked up, we want you to feel seen and valued and heard. We want you to understand and feel the warmth of Jesus, even if you don't know who Jesus is yet.
Wow.
We want you to experience that total and complete freedom to be who you are, love you right where you're at, not an ounce of judgment. There's no stigma, there's no shame at Hope House. This is your place to belong. Hence the name of the book. So it all starts there. It all starts with the building a basis of relationship with our moms. And as you build relationship and you build trust, because we offer a variety of programming. So today we serve about 280 teenage moms and their children from throughout the Denver metro area. And we offer three primary programs. We have a residential program, our housing support program, which includes our residential program that is sort of the story of the book, The House That God Built. We'll serve about 180 moms in that program this year, not housing them in our home. Our one little residential home can house 6 moms and their kids. But we have a variety of partnerships. We do a ton of helping moms navigate everything having to do with housing, whether it's signing a lease when I've never done that, understanding the words when I don't know what I'm reading, managing a landlord relationship when he won't get the bug problem fixed, learning to advocate for myself. Um, and we serve our moms from the age of 15. They come into our program between the ages of 15 and 20, already parenting. So they've already had their child, or maybe have more than one child when they come to us. And then we serve them until they turn 25. So on the far end at 25, we may even have some moms who are ready for home ownership and are taking classes around how do I buy a home. Today in our economy in the Denver area, that has not ever happened once yet as a single mom. All of our moms who've bought a home have been married at the time that they buy a home. Um,
I love the commitment to 25 because especially in the church world, we can think, "Oh, this 6-week class will really help you."
yeah,
You know, and it might give you some
and I might.
tools, right?
Yeah,
You know, and some
yeah,
different things. But what we really need is someone to walk with us, you know,
right.
and I love that's such a high value
Yeah,
relationship. So what you're talking about with Hope House is that it's actually a house that teen moms can live in, but then
mhm.
you also have a billion programs that help them,
Yeah,
you know, find a successful
yeah.
life, and then you built a daycare center,
Yes.
basically?
Yes. So, yeah,
That's
so
amazing.
the three primary programs are the housing support program that I described, and then our Empower program. The Empower program is sort of an umbrella over all of the other educational work we do. So that's GED in high school, online high school. We don't have an actual school. We have what we call a learning lab. We do financial literacy. So we look at self-sufficiency in two ways under our Empower program, both personal and economic. So on the economics side, that's all the things you would think of and typically why a mom comes to us. I need my GED. They almost never come just because they want to go to college because they almost never know that's a possibility for them. But we have GED, college support, financial literacy. We do what we call economic navigation, helping them with the basics of financial plan or budgeting and learning about financial literacy. Um, and then legal advocacy. Oftentimes they're struggling with parenting orders and other things like having a ticket and a warrant out for their arrest because they didn't go to court for a ticket that they had. And then on the
Okay.
personal side is everything having to do with our spiritual growth, our personal growth, our healthy relationships, counseling and healing trauma. And always, of course, on the personal side, it takes longer. And that's one of the main reasons we serve you until you turn 25, because there's a lot of backwards and forwards. I might move pretty quickly through GED and end up going on to some college. But if I'm still struggling with, being in a domestic violence relationship, or my mom's an addict and I keep, we'll see moms leave their progress at Hope House and go back home to care for younger siblings because mom's had a relapse. And then as mom, comes out of her, maybe she becomes healthy again, then we get teen mom back. So it takes a long time.
In
And then
Colorado, I have friends that own, like, multiple properties, and in Colorado, I didn't even realize, like, you can rent an apartment at whatever age,
you can, uh,
so I was thinking about your ministry, a and I was like, "Okay, so is this what teen moms do if they're kicked out of the house and they maybe do have a job or this support? Can, like, a 17-year-old just live in an apartment by themselves here?" Like,
almost always if you have so I'll give you an example. Alice, beautiful young lady, 17 years old, shady landlord, let her sign a lease, which he should not have done because she wasn't 18, so it's not legal.
"Oh,
And
okay."
then had all these horrible like issues with this apartment, and like literally you could pick up the carpet and see the critters
Ugh.
under there. And he would do nothing, and he didn't have to, in quotation marks, because she was underage. Well, then when she came to us and we were able to help her sort that out, he put an eviction, gave her an eviction notice, and our legal advocate was able to help sort that out because he could not actually evict her because she hadn't legally signed the lease. She wasn't old enough to sign the lease. So
This is
yes,
amazing.
it
This
can
is, like,
happen.
so many
It's not
things
good.
that you know, my little mind is like, "Help, teen mom be a good mom." But, like, you guys like in the book you keep talking about, we thought we needed this, and then we realized we needed this support and this
Yeah.
support. I'm not
Yes.
even thinking about like, oh, she needs so much legal support and then financial
Yeah.
training, and
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
amazing. So you're just
Which
advocating for them all the time.
Yes, exactly. That's 100% it. And then, yes, that kind of led to the third program is our early childhood education program, which was in the very beginning. It was like, well, we should be babysitting for these kiddos, while mom is studying, we should babysit. And then it's like, why are we babysitting? We should be helping them, doing actual early learning while we have them. So we now have an early learning program for on-site inside of our resource center on our campus. So we have a campus in East Arvada, about we have three buildings: the residential home, a resource center that's was built and completed in 2019, and that's where all this programming that I'm talking about happens. And then in October we opened an early learning center. So we have an early childhood
Wow.
program inside of our resource center that moms utilize while they're on site working on GED, and then just opened a full-time daycare center for 100 children of our teenage moms.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
incredible. That's
Yeah, it's
incredible.
crazy. I
So
stand back and look at it and go, look what God can do. This is crazy.
yeah, and I love how in the book you talk about, just needing to be the leader keeping the vision moving forward. That you have a heart to do all these
Yeah.
things with the moms, but then God's just like, I need you to keep making the hard phone calls, and
Yeah.
that, just some of the humbling moments you share about in your
Oh my
leadership
gosh.
journey. I was like, wow, I learned from
So
that
much.
testimony because
So much.
this has been for over 20 years now.
Yeah, we'll be 22 years old in
Okay.
April.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. So when I think about a house with teen moms, is there like an older mama or grandmama, or how does that work that
Mhm.
just lives there and loves on them, or what does
Yeah,
that
so
look like?
that is such a great question. So when we started Hope House, and I should preface this by saying, like, I literally am the least qualified person to be doing this work and I say this to everybody I meet, like, part of the premise of this book is if you feel like you have that like God's just tapping on your shoulder, like you have that thing, whether it's might not be teen moms, maybe it's something else, but something that just touches your heart and it won't let go of you. And it's God talking to you, but you just feel like, who, me? Like, I can't, what am I supposed to do about this? I can't do anything about this.
Mm.
I literally, my entire educational background is I have a high school diploma. I did home daycare and I worked at J.C. Penney's. So
Yes.
I am literally the last, like, least qualified person to be running a almost $5 million nonprofit. And when I even say those words out loud, I'm like, who? What? Huh? Like,
That's
really,
so
I'm
cool.
telling you, if you just say yes to what God's calling you to, He will surround you with the most amazing people to make that vision a reality, and you will get to have the adventure of a lifetime with Him. So I encourage
Oh,
people
I
to
love that. It
to
is such an
to say
adventure
yes.
to trust the Lord in the unknown waters, and the book is so great because it does talk about the first home that you guys
Yeah.
got and how God just like gave it to you and
Yes.
then
Yes. Yes.
land and all this stuff, and you're just like, what is happening? And then
What
you
is
have to
happening?
like, well, who's gonna go figure out city code for this thing? Guess it's
Exactly.
me. Guess
Exactly.
it's me.
Exactly. Well, yeah, back to your question, like, who's gonna live there? Like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want my family's not gonna move in and live there. I had three kids by that point. So it was essentially at the very beginning a small group of people that came together and just did a lot of like research on who else out there in the country is doing this kind of work and what works. What we found is that having a house mom, essentially one person who lives in a group home, that model struggles with sustainability because house moms turn over very quickly, like typically within 1 year to 18 months, because you kind of have no life if you're a house mom.
Yeah.
And that doesn't create sustainability or stability for the mamas in the home. And we knew that for us, because we'd been serving teenage moms through Teen MOPS and we saw the struggles that our teenage moms were having, we knew that really what we were going for was a true path to self-sufficiency, a true path to building a stable life for their child, which is what they wanted. Like, they're incredibly motivated to build a stable life for their little one. Back to that kind of modeling, like, if you tell a teenage mom that reading to their child will help them do better in school, they will literally say, where do I get books? because no one ever read to them as a child, and they've probably never been inside of a public library in their life. So they just don't know. But if you tell them, they want it, they want to be a good mom. So we decided on a staffed model for our residential program very early on. We knew we would have, kind of on like a rotating staff. So essentially, you have somebody there all day, a regular 8 to 5, and then an evening shift and a weekend shift. We do have someone who lives in the residential home, but they are only on duty for certain parts of the week.
Okay. And do you provide, like, all their meals and everything, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so of course, the 6 or 7 teenage moms who live in the residential program is kind of a fraction of the full number, but those moms are fully provided for. They don't pay any, no, none of our moms pay anything for anything that they do here at Hope House, other than for the Early Learning Center. They pay a parent fee based on, because it's a licensed center, the structure is required by the state. They pay a parent fee based on their income, and then CCAP, or the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program, pays the rest of their parent fee,
Wow.
to not quite equal full pay of what you would get if it was a privately run center. So we will probably always have to do a little bit of fundraising for that center. But the the so the three primary barriers to self-sufficiency are housing, transportation, and childcare. And childcare is, in our state, almost our entire state is considered a childcare desert. So we have only 2 spots available for every 3 children who need one. So about 98,000 children in our state whose parents want to work that cannot work because they cannot find childcare for,
Or
there simply is
safe
no. Yeah,
safe
well,
childcare.
yeah,
Like,
or safe
you end up leaving your
childcare.
kid with your mom who abused you, but you had no choice
Well,
because you have to go to work.
and that is
Mm.
100% the story of our teenage moms. So yeah, so building this childcare center was a huge piece of the dream, because it allows us to provide that childcare so that they can go to work and school full time.
That's amazing. I love it, and I love that, we talked about this a little bit before we started, but that there's there's so many names in
Hmm.
this book. There's real life pictures of moms and there's
Yeah.
kids, but there's so many names of, um part of my life call is to be just like a seed planter. So I love
Mm.
shepherding people, but it's also like I love evangelism. So I love meeting new people, doing new things all the time.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you're throwing seeds, but you don't always get to see the harvest. So I love that you named so many names in this book of people who did a little something, but
Yeah.
then God used that little something that they were faithful with, whether it was the little old lady that gave $15 a month or
Yep.
whatever it was. God used that little something to open this door or to
Yeah.
provide for this. And so
Yeah.
it's just such a testimony of just being faithful. Like we might not be able to, volunteer every day at a resource center, but just the what is in our hands, what's in our homes, what's in our hearts that God's given us to do just a little step forward. That
Yes.
was really cool. I loved
Yes.
hearing all those little testimonies because you were just like, and this person did this for us, and this person did this for us. And I loved that because God provides through his people. He
Yes.
does.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
we have to remember that when we have to be in community, and it's messy and it's not
Yeah.
perfect, but he does provide for his people. But I want to kind of close with this question. Just you say that you're the most unqualified person, but here you are a few decades later, and it's standing, it's growing, it's exploding. Now there's starting to be multiple locations, but you've navigated the 2008 financial recession, crisis, all those things, multiple layoffs. You've now gone through the global pandemic and you've just trusted that God would provide. And you keep coming back to that. I love how you shared that in the A Place to Belong book. But can you share just give us some of the taste of the miracles God's done over the years, just some unexpected ways that God showed up during the challenging times you've been through, just to
Mhm.
encourage maybe
Yeah.
a listener that's going through that right now, that he is faithful and he is there and it's not going to look like how we thought it would look, but we're not alone. Can you share some of the ways he's shown up for you guys at Hope House?
Such a beautiful question. So, I think sometimes I share such big stories, and there are so many big stories, like you don't have enough money for payroll in those early years, and the $5,000 check that shows up like completely unexpectedly in the mailbox, and you didn't even know, like somebody from your church sold a home, and so they had some money from the sale, and they gave some to you, and it's like, what? Like, why would you choose us? Um, to like during the recession, we had to lay off staff because we had to cut $200,000 out of our budget in a very short period of time, and so we couldn't take in two moms who were homeless, and we had volunteers step up to be volunteer staff, like literal staff, like they would show up for shifts, they would come to staff meetings, they literally were everything a staff member was, but with no paycheck. Like, who knew that God would provide somebody's heart to do
Mhm.
that? But I think sometimes it's the little, like one of the things we learned during that really rough financial period in 2008 was take stock of all the things we need. So we started this little prayer ledger, and two of the very first prayers were our microwave had broken and our vacuum had broken. And so we prayed and we were praying for big things. We were praying for, what are we supposed to do with the fact that we have two homeless teenage moms that we can't house? What are we going to do? And we have people we have to lay off. So we're praying for huge things, but also for the little things. And literally the day after we prayed that prayer, a microwave and a vacuum showed up, with, somebody dropping by like, hey,
Wow.
I have a microwave. Do you guys need it? Like, literally, like, just and from those, somebody donates a microwave, you build a relationship where down the road maybe they sell a home, and then they're in deep relationship with you by this point, so then they maybe are able to make a $5,000 gift. So it all just like builds on itself, but it's being so grateful for every little thing that our champions do for us, and we call them champions because they're champions of our cause and champions of our moms. And I'll close with just like what I consider all of our moms a miracle story. But one mama I'll share about, I shared a little bit in the book, is Alondra, who came to our
Mm.
residential program as a 17-year-old with a 1-year-old child. Mom had left the family, gone to another state. Her dad had gone to jail. She was literally homeless. She was able to finish high school. She went on to nursing school. She didn't even know that was a possibility for her. And all of our Hope House, like our staff and our volunteers, got to be there for her. Uh, they do a ceremony for new nurses called the pinning ceremony. And her little boy, Aiden, at that point was 8 years old. And he was the one who put the pin on her. And I tell
Ugh.
this story that I think she might have been the only brand new nurse in that whole entire graduation that didn't have any biological family members in the room. But when she got her pin, an entire two rows of people like erupted out of their seats, like all her Hope House family just cheering and clapping and laughing and loving her because she's ours.
Mm.
And we are her family, and not that our moms do have families, and we cherish that too, but this gets to be their second family and their second home, and it was a beautiful thing to see her dream come true, and a culmination of my dream too. It was beautiful.
So cool. I remember that story in the book and just being like, wow, to feel so much support and to be known and
Yeah,
seen and loved unconditionally. Because
yeah.
I'm sure it's not like they have a house now, they feel safe. Now they're, going to be perfect, because
Oh
none of
no,
us are, but
no, and
just
they're
having
teenagers
people,
still, so
yeah, they're teenagers still. And, so be coming in and just having grace upon grace. But can you tell us, two things? One, how can people get involved to support Hope House? And then where can we find you guys online or
yeah.
different places?
Yeah. So you can find us at hopehousecolorado.org, O-R-G. So just find us on our website. There are tons of ways you can volunteer, ways you can get engaged. We have groups for young professionals. We have groups for just volunteering, just about anything you want to do. If you don't live close to Hope House or close enough to get involved personally, there are other ways you can get engaged. Some long distance volunteering opportunities, but one of the things we're pushing forward at this point is our big, hairy, audacious goal is to have 30 Hope House affiliates across the country by 2032. So we have our first out of state, out of Colorado affiliate opening in Orange County, California. So if you're in Orange County,
Wow.
look up Hope House, Orange County. But yeah, if you feel like God might be tapping you on the shoulder and you have a heart for teen parents, connect with us through our website, and we would love to talk to you about opening a Hope House in your hometown.
Thank you so much for coming today and sharing, and we just pray blessing over you guys. And
Thank you.
it just really encouraged and inspired my own faith to be like, yeah, I know God does stuff, but look, God does stuff,
He does, right here in our own backyard. He does
right
miracles
here.
still today, not just overseas or back in Bible times.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining the Only Love Today podcast. I hope you are encouraged to look like love no matter where God has you. If you want to learn more about what we discussed, be sure to check out the show notes and head on over to onlylovetoday.com. If you were encouraged by this conversation, please share it with a friend and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Remember, whatever happens today, before you respond, stop and think, only love today.